Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Worcester Township Board of Supervisors business meeting for January 17th, 2024. Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? My name is Rick DeLello. I'm the chairman of the board. To my left is Lou Betts, who is our vice chair. To my right is Steve Quigley, our third member. Over on the side table, at the front table, we have Wendy McKenna from our solicitor's office and John Everts from our engineering office. On the back table, we have Sean Halbum, who is our township manager. First and foremost, does anybody have any informational items for the board tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this meeting is being video recorded for future broadcast. Also, the Board of Supervisors met on, this should say January 13th, 2024, to discuss personnel. Discuss, pardon me, I'm on the wrong page. The board met on January 15th from 3 to 5 p.m. To discuss personnel, litigation, and real estate. No decisions were made.
Thank you, Sean. First item on our agenda is public comment. We do request that you keep your public comment to 5 minutes. Does anybody have any public comment for the board this evening? Okay, we'll start here. So, absolutely, you come forward. We would ask you to have a seat, to sign the sheet. We'll make sure that you pull the mic close to you and that you've got a glowing green light on the...
I do, and this may be very quick because actually, my name is Kate McShane. My address is 2976 Horseshoe Drive, but I actually just wanted to ask you now, I would like to comment on the Variety Club project, and I wanted to know if I need to do that now or if you will let me do that when you're on that topic.
Yep. You may do that. That would be great.
Conditional use hearing scheduled this evening, and you will have time during the proceedings to make any comment or ask questions with regard to the application. So any comments or questions with regard to the conditional use application, we'll hold till we proceed with the hearing.
Great, thank you. Do you need me to still sign this?
I do, if you don't mind. Thank you. Does anybody else have any public comment for the board on, I would say, a non-conditional use item? Sir, in the back. Oh. Sorry, Bob, I couldn't see you.
I should hide more often if I can. Bob Andor, Worcester. As you will recall, last meeting I was here and asked some questions regarding the budget. And I was working off of a 2024 budget that was in the back. Then I was informed that that was an old budget. And then I was presented with the 2023 budget, which is what you had in your documentation. We questioned that. You called a recess to kind of get that organized. We went through and I asked my question regarding specifically the interest income. But in the process, it was made to make me wrong in that application when, in fact, I was the only one who had the right information. I question whether you guys ever had the right information, the 2024 budget, and ultimately you passed that budget with a unanimous vote. At that time, I asked if I could keep the document in the back. I was told no. That was the only one that was there. And I was presented by the township manager with a copy of what was the 2023 budget, and I handed that back in. I was told that the budget information was available online. I left that meeting, and shortly thereafter, I went on the website, and the information that was on the website was this document, which is the 2023 budget with the 2024 cover sheet. I printed this off on January the 5th. The 2024 budget was not put onto the website until sometime between January 5th and January the 11th. That's unacceptable. It's unprofessional, and it doesn't give the township residents an opportunity to review, albeit after the fact because you already approved the budget. I now have the 2024 budget in front of me, which I got too late. So among other things, I just have a question. So you've approved a budget, and as part of that conversation, where you were talking about the budget being passed, you were commenting on the sewer fund and how in the past the sewer fund was never funded properly, and over the past years, from Art Bustard's timeframe to currently, you've been funding it properly, and that the sewer fund would only be increased the equivalent of 0.5%, roughly 22 cents a resident per month, is basically $2.50. According to this budget, the 2024 budget, it reflects, and I don't know if you know this or not, that the sewer fund was in a deficit for the year 2023 to the tune of $1.05 million. Are you aware of that? From the receipts coming in to your expenditures, you spent, from what I can determine, roughly half of the fund that you had available. And then you chose not to address any of that moving forward in 2024 with a minimal increase. You lose $1 million of unanticipated expenditures. I'm not faulting you. Thank God we had $2 million to cover that. There's not a single note in here that addresses that. I would consider a $1 million loss in a particular fund for unexpected anticipated costs to be a material change.
Okay.
And therefore, there ought to be some kind of note, documentation, reference, so that people can understand it. This just gets wiped under the table. Okay, move forward. This, the budget indicates that, we want to keep and maintain $1 million in reserve. So essentially you have that, but understand if you lost $1 million this year, unanticipated costs, it can happen again this year perhaps, in which case the fund becomes insolvent. That's irresponsible. I don't know, nor do I really believe, that the three of you even had the 2024 budget when you approved it. I don't know when you had it, if you had it. How do I find out that? I file right to know?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you would find that out, Bob. I mean, you can file a right to know. I mean, we had 4 months of presentations where
I
our
appreciate
finance
that,
director
Rick. So what I
was here.
did was I went back and I watched the 2023. You gonna throw me out or are you gonna just silence that?
Let him speak. Let him speak. I want to hear what he's going to say.
I have not stopped you, Bob.
I know. So I watched the September meeting where Nicole made a presentation, which is essentially the executive summary, 3-4 pages. There was no documentation in the package that was available for people, for residents to review. I watched the October video. Nicole made the same executive summary, 3 or 4 pages, and there was no documentation available. I was present for the November meeting, where Nicole basically made the same executive summary presentation. And I looked through the package of information, and there is no budget information available. I came in December, that's where the budget was in the back, and then I was, among other things, told that that wasn't accurate. So there has been no information provided to the residents to review that budget. And I'm very concerned that I don't know what you guys were looking at. I'm also I'm tremendously concerned that you told me to go to the website after here, and the information that you told me would be available was not available.
I'm going to have to look into that, Bob. I don't have a good answer for you for that. So I'm going to have to check.
From my perspective, this system's broken,
Okay.
and I'm asking you to fix it. And if you don't want to fix it, step aside and allow somebody else to fix it. Because this isn't the first problem that we're having. It just so happens that I'm just looking at it now. I'm just looking at big numbers. Among other things, you procured 2 properties in 2023, the Dutchy Church and the Griffith property.
Yep.
Big numbers, 800,000 plus or minus?
Roughly.
Yes, okay.
Yep.
And you would have used funds from the Open Space Fund to procure those?
Correct.
Okay. So from the 2024 budget, the open space plan, if I look because it references previously, it references that the open space plan had roughly $1.5 million in it. And then in 2024, it has $1.7 million. You spent $800,000. It's not clear where that information came from. Again, the system's broken.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate your comments. Does anybody else have any public comment for the board tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward. First item on our agenda is the official action items. We have a consent agenda. First and foremost, does any board member wish to remove any items from our consent agenda? No. Okay. Then I'll take a motion if somebody wants to make one.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda, pay the bills of the township for $303,974.52.
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we have a motion. This is going to be a motion to authorize execution by the Township of the Valley Forge Road Corridor Stormwater Management Facilities Easement Agreement. That's a mouthful. But we've had several of these. Wendy, I'm going to hand this over to you, but we're accepting a dedication of street right-of-way signed by John G. and Marissa G. Zopp from 1330 Dell Road.
Yes, that's right. So this is one of the properties that the township has requested the property owner to execute a deed of dedication and a stormwater management facilities easement for the Valley Forge Road Corridor project. That document has been signed by the property owners, and this is one of the remaining property owners that we've been working with. So we're happy to report that at this point, I think we've acquired all of the necessary easements or deeds of dedication for the project, with the exception of 2 that we referenced at last month's meeting. So I think we have been pretty successful in acquiring the easements right away.
Excellent.
Needed for the project. So you would need to make a motion to authorize execution of the stormwater management facilities easement and accept the deed of dedication with respect to the Zopp property at 1330 Dell Road.
Thank you, Wendy. Does any board member have any questions regarding this particular item?
No.
Okay. I'll take a motion if you want to make one.
Make a motion that we approve the stormwater management facilities easement for the dedication of the right-of-way signed by John G. and Marissa G. Zopp, 1330 Dell Road.
Second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any public comment regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Next up, we're going to have a conditional use application for the Variety Club. I'm going to hand that over to Wendy so she can sort of explain the mechanics. If folks have attended a zoning board meeting, it's similar to that, but I'll let Wendy sort of explain the parameters, and then we will proceed.
Yes, so this evening, actually, we're going to, the public meeting that we are presently in, we will recess from at this point, and we are now opening the public hearing with respect to the conditional use application of the Variety Club regarding the property at 2950 Pot Shop Road. The applicant is seeking conditional use approval to install lighting at a athletic field to be constructed at the property. A conditional use application for folks here that may not know the process. This is a quasi-judicial hearing. It is similar to a zoning hearing, as Mr. DiLello indicated. The board, in this case, sits essentially as judges, or the judges who will hear the testimony presented this evening by the applicant. The applicant is here and is represented by counsel. There's a court reporter here that will take down the testimony. If there is anyone here who is interested in the application, it is possible to request party status. And what that means is that if someone has standing as a party, they would be able to present evidence with respect to the application and also would be able to participate in an appeal in the event the proceedings, in the event following the decision of the board, if there were an appeal to the Court of Common Pleas, someone with party status would have that ability. It is not necessary to request party status or be admitted as a party if you would like to ask questions or make statements with respect to the application. However, you would not be able to present evidence. So in order to be considered a party, it is necessary that an individual have standing. That essentially means that they are affected in a substantial way with respect to the application. Generally, it's common that someone within 500 feet would be eligible to have party status. So I'll ask, is there anybody here, and in the event someone is requesting party status, the applicant's attorney would have the ability to ask them questions to determine if it is actually appropriate for them to have party status. So I will ask, is there anybody here in the audience this evening that would like party status with respect to this application? And it appears that there are none. So again, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding. The applicant will proceed and will present testimony and evidence. I understand that there are, I believe, 3 witnesses. The order will be that the applicant's attorney will call a witness, will present testimony of that witness. Following that, the board will have the opportunity to ask questions of the witness, and then anyone in the audience who has any general questions can ask questions, not present evidence, but ask questions. Later in the, assuming that the proceedings are completed this evening, and I am not sure that they will be, we will have a hard stop this evening at 9 o'clock, so it is possible that we will need to return for another night in February. With that, I'm just going to go through a couple housekeeping items. There are some exhibits that I have marked as the township exhibits. Exhibit T1 is the conditional use application of Variety, the children's charity of the Delaware Valley, which was submitted by the applicant's attorney and The application includes deeds for the subject property and some plans that I expect will be reviewed in detail this evening. Exhibit T2 is email correspondence from counsel for the applicant indicating that he has waived the time requirement to schedule the conditional use hearing, agreeing to a continuance to this evening. Exhibit T3 is the legal notice for the conditional use hearing. Exhibit T4 is the affidavit of publication that the legal notice was advertised in the Times Herald on December 20th, 2023 and December 27th, 2023. Exhibit T5 is an affidavit of posting by the Township Director of Public Works affirming that the notice of these proceedings was published on the property on January 10th, 2024. I'm sorry, not published, posted on the property on January 10th, 2024. Exhibit T6 is the mailing list of property owners within 500 feet who received notice of the proceedings this evening. Exhibit T7 is the affidavit of mailing of that legal notice signed by myself as solicitor for the township. Exhibit T8 are the draft minutes of the Worcester Township Planning Commission of their meeting on December 14th, 2023, when the Planning Commission reviewed the application. Exhibit T9 is correspondence dated December 5th, 2023, from the Township Engineer, CKS Engineers, regarding the application. And then Exhibit T10 is the Township Lighting Consultant Bowman Company, their review letter dated January 16th, 2024, regarding the application. So those are the township exhibits. And with that, I will turn the floor over to Mr. Jonas, and he can proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Mark Jonas. I represent Variety, the children's charity of the Delaware Valley, along with John McShay, Esquire, of our firm. We have a proposal tonight for a conditional use, as this board well knows, but it's important to state this is a very limited zoning application relating to just one issue, and that is the illumination of a athletic field on the property. This is not land development, which would follow should this application be granted. The board knows that land development concerns the details of construction and improvement, stormwater, things of that nature. But the limited issue before the board tonight is the question of illumination, which is permitted as a conditional use. The board may know I have a little experience in my background with lighting in Worcester Township. We're certainly aware of the provisions that the township has included in the zoning ordinance to allow, subject to very certain standards and requirements, particularly relating to the protection of abutting property owners, to allow the illumination of athletic fields, and that's the nature of this application. We have before you, and we've distributed a booklet which has a series of proposed exhibits, A1 through A16. The first is a very exciting deed to the property. The board well knows this is a longtime property owner within the township, so we would ask the board and the solicitor if the board is satisfied that the deed gives standing for Variety to be here tonight to request conditional use relief.
Yes, that is appropriate.
The rest of the exhibits, again, A2 through A16, will be addressed by our three witnesses. First witness is the CEO of Variety. She'll be followed by our civil engineer and by the lighting expert. We understand you have a hard stop at 9 o'clock. We do know, we heard from one member of the public that they would like to present some public comment. My suggestion for the board's consideration is by 8:30, if we're not through with our three witnesses, perhaps the board could allow public comment for scheduling purposes of those who might want to address the board relating to this application. If that's satisfactory.
I think that's reasonable.
Sorry?
I think that's reasonable to work with, Mark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And with that, we call our first witness, Dominique Bernardo.
Dominique Bernardo, Dominique, Bernardo, Bernardo.
Again, please state your name.
My name is Dominique Bernardo.
And how are you connected to the applicant Variety?
I am the CEO of Variety since January of 2019.
And what are your general responsibilities as CEO?
As the CEO, I oversee the entire operations fiscally, programmatically, operationally, which includes managing our 77-acre campus.
What is Variety?
Yep. Variety is an 88-year-old nonprofit that serves children and young adults with disabilities. Our mission is to enrich the lives of children and young adults with disabilities through educational, recreational, and vocational programs that foster independence, self-confidence, and prepare them for life, all of which we measure. We own a 77-acre campus in Worcester, as you know, which is our primary site for services to hundreds of children with disabilities on an annual basis. We serve children with autism, cerebral palsy, rare diagnoses like Prader-Willi. Some of our children bring one-on-one nurses with them. They require medication. Some even have feeding tubes. And we're really a second home to many of the children and their families.
Direct your attention to the exhibit booklet, specifically Exhibit 2. Can you highlight what that exhibit is, how it relates to Variety? Yes.
Yes. This is hot off the presses. This is our annual report. We are a data-driven organization. It's important to us as a nonprofit that we're able to demonstrate our impact. So we track not only outputs, how many kids we serve, what are their diagnoses, what are their demographics, which is included on here, but also our outcomes. How many are we placing in jobs? How many are showing improvement in self-confidence? And there's some interesting stats in here. We have gardens and greenhouses. How many plants and vegetables we planted, and we planted 5,000 seeds. So this is an at-a-glance annual impact report that is literally, you're the first people in public to see it. It's about to go live this week.
How long has Variety been at this location in Worcester Township?
So in 1949, this property was donated to Variety by the Posel family. It was their country estate. And we shortly after we started providing direct services to boys recovering from polio. That was our first services as a summer camp. And since then, we have evolved to providing year-round programs, vocational programs, educational programs, weekend programs as well, to any child or young adult with any disability, physical or developmental or intellectual.
Direct your attention to Exhibit 3, which is an aerial photo within the booklet. Can you give us a general location? Obviously, your testimony is going to be followed by our civil engineer and then by the lighting expert. Just give us an overview of the general location of the Variety campus.
The Variety campus is located on Pot Shop Road, as well as there's borders of Valley Forge Road and North Trooper Road as well. Am I answering the question?
Yes. You're doing good, son, so far. Keep it up. What's the size of the property?
77 acres.
And give us again an overview of some of the buildings and land improvements within the campus.
Sure. So there's about probably 36 structures on campus. About 18 of them are cabins that many buildings have been constructed in the 50s. We have a dining hall from the 50s. We have 3 hoop houses. We have a paved organic garden. We have hoop houses, greenhouses. We have an industrial kitchen in our dining hall. We have a gymnasium. We have an outdoor pool. And we have many spaces for classrooms and trainings as well. We have a recreation hall as well.
Do you currently have any athletic fields?
We currently have a challenger-sized baseball field that is, when you arrive onto campus and come through the driveway, it's one of the first things you hit on the left after the parking lot. That is the only marked field on our campus.
I think you've already touched on it, but tell us and the ways that Variety uses its property in Worcester Township.
Yeah, so our primary purpose for the campus is to deliver the services to children with disabilities. As I mentioned, after-school programs, all-day, full-day Saturday camp, weekend camping retreats, daily vocational training for young adults has been a big area of growth for us for the past 5 years. And in summer, as you all have heard, right, we have camps, summer school, and more vocational training. We also host community events that are open to the public. Our Holiday Lane event is a 3-day event which welcomes over 1,500 people from the community on an annual basis in December. It also helps promote awareness of our mission. And we also host hundreds of volunteers from corporate and community groups on an annual basis who engage in community service on our campus, help us maintain the campus, but also have the opportunity to learn about our mission.
Does Variety from time to time allow other nonprofits or even the governmental entities to use any of your facilities?
Yes, we are a polling site, so we hold elections there twice a year, so many Worcester residents come onto our campus during those times. We also have nonprofit youth organizations that include Special Olympics, Methacton Community Theater, Muscular Dystrophy Association, Montgomery County Beekeepers Association, Blind Sports, and other local nonprofits use our facilities currently.
Variety has a master plan, but for the moment, we're talking about one aspect of that master plan. Tell us about the proposal for athletic fields, and again, Mr. Boker will talk about that in detail, but
Sure.
give us an introduction, if you will.
Sure. So as I stated, we currently have no marked fields on our campus except for the baseball field. And recreation and socialization is a huge part of our mission. It's an important part of the development and growth for the individuals we serve. Specific to the turf proposed eliminated field, supporting with children with disabilities means that we must present an environment that exceeds common safety standards, as the risks and consequences are more prevalent than in a neurotypical population, i.e. those without disabilities. So without artificial turf, wheelchair users and mobile aid users are unable to engage in play opportunities or must do so at a higher risk of injury. Artificial turf eliminates that barrier that uneven, rough grass presents to these children. The majority of the children we serve do present with a neurological disability. And so neurological disabilities commonly coincide with functional gait issues, how you walk, and even just at normal walking speed. And when then they start to run or at a hurried speed, those functional issues become worse. So for this reason, poorly draining soil creates an unsafe environment. What artificial turf does, it eliminates this issue with efficient, effective drainage, creating a more safe environment for our kids. It provides opportunities for sensory play due to its different texture, color, light interaction, and general appearance compared to standard grass. And lastly, it lowers the risk of allergy triggers. Artificial grass is free from pollen, molds, fungus, and other allergens, and persons with disabilities are disproportionately affected by issues related to allergies. So without the inclusion of the artificial turf into the proposed athletic fields, the barrier to the recreational play in grass environments will persist and continue to segregate the population we support from enjoying safe play opportunities. The lights, the illumination maximize the use of the field, especially during the fall and winter. We have students that are in school, have additional therapies, have doctor appointments. The times that they can come to us, are very precious. We have waiting lists for every single one of our programs. If we had more capacity, it would be wonderful to serve more. It's common to have recreational programming in the evening into the dusk hours and on the weekends. And in addition, the development of fields are also part of our outreach to other nonprofit groups, and it helps promote our mission and the work we do.
How many fields are proposed at this time?
At this time, we're only looking to build one turf field.
And that field is the field that you're proposing illumination, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
I'm going to direct your attention to Exhibit 4. Does the field to be illuminated, does that appear on Exhibit 4? And if so, can you just, it's a pretty high aerial view. How is the field shown?
It's shown as a green rectangle with, you can see some sports markings as if it's a soccer field.
Township Solicitor has identified in the list of exhibits a letter from the township engineer, and I'm going to ask you only specifically with regard to the lighting requirements. The details of the location and illumination of the field will be addressed by the subsequent witnesses. But just to address the conditions that the township has imposed in its regulations, will all events on the lighted turf field and by 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and by 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday.
Yes,
Will there be, at the risk of a double negative, no lights on Sunday?
correct. There will be no lights on Sunday.
Will the field be illuminated when there is no activity taking place on?
No, it will not be.
And I think you've already mentioned the use of the existing facilities by Variety. Do you intend on a limited basis to allow the illuminated turf field to be used by other nonprofits?
Yes, by other nonprofits, yes.
But it will not be available to the general public?
No, it will not be an open to the public field. No, people cannot just come onto the field without a prior agreement and certain restrictions and rules.
The regulations for illumination are very mindful of the impact of illuminated fields on neighbors. Variety's been a longtime member of the community. Has Variety actively reached out to neighbors to talk about the master plan and specifically the proposed illuminated turf field? And if so, give the Board of Supervisors a summary of those outreach efforts.
Yep. I mean, in my 5-year tenure, I've had an open door policy with neighbors. Since 5 years ago, we sat here and talked about the ordinance related to the plan. I have dropped off zucchini breads at neighbors that our kids have made. I have invited them to our events, and I have an open door policy. And I get excited when I meet a new neighbor because I really want to develop that relationship. It's important to me that we do be good neighbors to those near us. Some history, we invited approximately 20 neighbors to an on-campus event in May of 2022 to share the overall plans for the campus revitalization and hoping to spread the word. We shared detailed plans of our master plan at the Planning Commission and Township Supervisor meetings in 21 and 22, culminating in approval of the ordinance amendment, as you're all familiar with, in February of 2022. Representative Matt Bradford shared a social media post in October 22 that referenced the fields. Variety posted a very large sign, I think it's 96 by 48, with a photo of the field in the entrance pathway of its campus prior to our Holiday Lane event in December, knowing we were getting a lot of neighbors to come on campus. So we wanted to make sure they knew what was happening. And we had over 1,500 people come through because we count them. We invited approximately 50 neighbors, 50 neighbors, to a December 4th meeting on our property to share information specifically about this field with the lighting experts, with our contractor, to make sure the neighbors were aware of it and could ask questions. We sent a letter via postal mail to neighbors to invite them to that meeting. We had 3 households attend. We had detailed conversation, and there were no objections to the construction of the fields or the illumination at that meeting. So that's a list of what specifically happened.
And as part of that outreach is Exhibit 6. Is that the letter dated November 28th, 2023, to your neighbors?
Yes, it is the letter. And we even went to the post office to make sure we knew who was P.O. boxes versus who was a street address to make sure that folks got the letter.
And that was sent to 50 neighbors, is that correct?
Correct.
I'd like to direct your attention, skipping ahead, to Exhibit 16. Did Variety receive letters of support for the field project from neighboring property owners and the Special Olympics of Montgomery County?
Yes, we did.
Would you identify first Exhibit 16A? Is that the letter of support dated January 13th, 2024 from the Special Olympics?
Yes.
And identify, if you would, 16B.
Yes, that's a letter from a neighbor.
And who is the neighbor, please?
Tammy Gall is a close neighbor to the property as well as a Variety parent. Gaul.
Those are all the questions I have of Dominique. Her testimony will be followed by Mr. Boker, the civil engineer, and then our lighting consultant.
So now, if any of the board members have questions, now would be the time.
So I have a couple. So Dominique, maybe you could go back, if you could, in 2019, you made a presentation in front of the board, sort of a master plan. And one of the items, and I don't know if it was a phone call you and I had prior to that or if it was at that meeting, but you talked about one of the desires was to sort of add some stability to sort of the financial structure of the Variety Club so that year to year you were not, and I'm paraphrasing, but sort of limping along year to year. Could you maybe talk a little bit more about sort of what went behind the master plan. And, I know you came before us in 19, there was 21, there was 22 a few times to the Planning Commission, but if maybe you could speak more broadly to sort of what the underlying goal was with the master plan and maybe how that has worked over the course of the last 5 years. You can maybe talk to that a little bit.
Sure, sure. So if any folks have been to the campus, and I know the Board of Supervisors have been at some point, it's an aging campus. It's an aging infrastructure, right? 36 plus buildings on this campus. And quite frankly, the kids that come to our campus deserve a new, updated space and equipment and tools, just as I would want my kids to if they were going to a camp or an after-school program. We accept a lot of in-kind donations. We have a lot of donated things. We get all kinds of crazy things donated sometimes, and we are so grateful to the community for that. But the space needed to be updated. And so the master facilities plan viewed the campus through the lens of our vocational training and through the lens of us doing more in the garden and agriculture and respecting setbacks and being a good neighbor and really growing our programs, not so much from the numbers perspective, but growing them in a way that they're higher quality, updated facilities, and we're measuring the change in the students. At the time when I came on board, Variety did not have an endowment. We currently have an endowment of $150,000. There were some financial strains around fundraising and being able to ensure the future stability of the agency. And so my role as a former auditor and with experience in that was to help bring stability to the organization, make sure we could be there another 88 years and continue to be a second home and a much needed resource. There's nobody like us in Montgomery County. There's nobody that owns a property, can have the flexibility to serve kids the way we do. And so for the master facilities plan, we have taken it very thoughtfully, very slowly. We currently are in the process of finishing constructing a 3,000 square foot multi-use cabin, which replaces 3 of the cabins we have from the 50s. We replaced the gym on our roof. It used to rain in the gym every time it rained outside, and so that has been a wonderful improvement as well. We were able to secure some government funding to help achieve those improvements. We're continuing with the capital campaign to help continue make more master plan improvements. We're doing them thoughtfully so that we have improved infrastructure that is fully accessible, universally accessible, and able to serve the students and families at a high quality, just as if they went to somewhere else. Am I answering your question, Mr. DeLillo?
So, yeah. Okay. I think that, part of the overall thinking when you came before the board was to give us some insight into what the future held.
Yeah.
And then 5 years later, it was sort of nice to hear, well, did it work?
Yeah,
Plans are great, but did it actually,
Yes.
was that an outcome that you had? And certainly some of the things you had asked of our board in years past was to allow sort of a zoning structure that would make it easier for you to present that picture in the marketplace.
Yes.
And it sounds like that outcome was as desired, I guess.
Yes, and I would say that I think that's evidenced by the many partnerships we have with many community business partners in Worcester as well as Montgomery County who have our kids on their property training or they come on campus as well. We have support now from the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. We partner with grants with the Montgomery County Conservation District. There's many local partners from Dow Chemical to Allen Myers to Merck who provide a lot of volunteerism, a lot of in-kind and pro bono support. And so, yeah, and our balance sheet and our financial statement, our income statement prove it as well. Like, we are sustainable, we are here to stay, we want to continue to provide quality programs and really just meet the needs of this medically vulnerable, underserved population. So I'm really pleased where we are. We have a ways to go, but we're looking to do that, again, as a good neighbor and really continuing to represent the Worcester community well.
Okay, and I got one sort of follow-up question. You had talked a lot about the neighborhood outreach that you did, and obviously, in an exhibit, there's a letter of support, there's the letter from the Special Olympics. There's another half to that. I guess I would love to hear if you had any neighbors express any concerns to you. What sort of feedback did you hear? We can see the good. Has there been feedback from any neighbors that you can speak to that maybe expressed concerns, and what concerns might those have been?
I have not had anybody directly express any concern to me or to any of my staff at Variety, so I cannot speak to that. I mean, I could speak to hearsay, but I don't know if that's appropriate, so I have not had anybody. And again, my door is open. I am willing to have anybody tour the campus, show them what we do, and hopefully become a longtime supporter.
Okay, fair enough. That's all I have at this time. Any other board members that have questions? Lou?
Yeah, I think it's a great organization. I love your energy.
Oh, thanks.
You love your job, I can tell. You
do.
You're the right person. The only question I do have is the 77-acre facility, and on your section, on the maps, like the section 4, and then the location of the field. If you look at your 4 and 5 picture, or 3 and 4 picture, when they located the field.
Yes.
So again, the biggest thing in this area is the lights, because neighbors around you are going to change. They're going to move on and buy and sell. So on a 77-acre facility, is it located in a spot where, even though we're going to put lights up and you're like 70-footers, it's going to impact somehow, some ways? It's just the way it is. So the location, I guess, was designed by someone in engineering, I'm sure. So I guess the big question is, if it's centrally located where like no neighbor can really see it, it's going to be shielded with trees, there's always some wash. I mean, I don't care. It's just the way it is. All that has to be taken into consideration. And again, was that thought through to the point where none of the neighbors within a reason are ever going to be affected by this? And that's the only concern, I believe, there's a traffic concern, I guess, if you have an exceptional turnout for whatever special event. And I guess we'll have to answer those questions. But again, mine is more the location. On 77 acres, you could put that sucker right in the middle, but I don't know if that's even possible.
Yeah, I mean, this is so this was the location on the master plan when landscape engineers and architects proposed the master plan back in 2019, and then reapproved by our current construction team, which includes engineers, architects, et cetera. The field has, the campus itself has drainage issues. I should just say there's right. And so as you go down more towards 363, you get more drainage. So this is a logical place to put it. It's aligned with the gym, which also provides extra bathrooms. And it really is in the sort of the most isolated spot you could, rather, as far as related to neighbors, to be honest, where you could tuck it away. Granted, nothing is invisible, correct?
Yeah, that's the bigger concern. I mean,
Yeah.
stormwater is always going to be handled. That's always, that's a way big problem. But again, it's the neighbors are going to change. It's like a high school. The high school's going to stay.
Yep.
The neighbors around it,
Yep.
and Mr. Jonas is well aware of lighting with that issues, but I sat through a lot of those meetings. I mean, I got gray hair over
I'm
that.
forgiven, am I?
And I've heard the legend
Depends when we
of those
start talking
meetings.
about foot candles, Mark. When we start talking about foot candles, we'll
Speed
see.
of a ball through a light, oh my God.
And
Anyway.
my understanding is the experts are going to speak as well, that the technology has evolved even since then, that if you're, so I'm hoping
Lighting's
that.
better, obviously, with the LEDs and all the technologies. Again, mine is only, and I would like more input from both members, is because who's going to feel the feedback after this is built? That's when the complaints start kicking in, because you approve this, if you approve it. Neighbors are going to change, and again, it's always about the inconvenience of, it wasn't like that before I bought my house. Now you've changed it, now they're affected. Same with the high school lights. That has sort of corrected itself, and I'm hoping this works well, because I'm all for
Yeah,
your mission.
yep.
I just need to make sure that we just really do this right and try to protect our residents. That will change events, but everything you're doing, I believe, is the best we can do. That's my only concern. So I'd have,
So your question was specific to the location. Maybe we'll ask the engineer a couple more questions on the layout when we get to the engineer as well. We can talk about the location of the field and the drainage and some of those other issues in a little more detail. But okay.
I
Fair
think we
enough.
have like a 1-2 punch coming.
Perfect.
Positive way, that you have very rigorous standards built into the ordinances, and they do reflect a considerable concern for neighbors, and not only current neighbors, but the successors as well. It's been interesting to us as council to see how the lighting technology has evolved. I think our lighting expert from Musco is going to be quite, quote, illuminating about the impact of the technology, and it's almost, it's really fascinating how limited and direct the technology can be, so much though, and we heard that in our preparation, and I'm sort of testifying that you can light a field, and if there are bleachers next to the field, the bleachers can be completely in the dark. So I think what the board will hear, and you've had your own lighting expert review this, and we are responding to those comments as well. I think you will hear that both the location and the technology will protect, Mr. Betts, your concerns and the concerns of the other supervisors. We'll let the evidence speak for itself.
If I could add two more things, actually. One is I would say you have my commitment and the commitment of the board, which predated me. I know you're saying people turnover, et cetera, to continue to remain a good neighbor and to continue to have an open door, because our reputation is only as good as the people that are talking about it. And I think that's been a key to our success the past 5 years. And the second thing, the last thing I want to say is this is a really important project to us. Again, our kids deserve new, our kids deserve the best, and this will help us be competitive, be able to provide a safer space. And I think compared to other alternatives, this is a great use for an empty field. So I do hope that you will support it, and thank you for the questions.
Steve, do you have any questions at this
Yeah, I
point?
just have a few things I wrote down, and I sort of I'll follow the outline that you did. You mentioned, first of all, the year-round programs.
Yes.
What percentage of the programs you have now are year-round? And what's the percentage spring, summer, fall, winter?
It's probably more like academic and summer, right? So academic year, I mean, it's probably like a 50-50 split now at this point. I mean, there are vocational training older students on our campus 5 days a week. We've got after-school programs 4 days a week, and every Saturday we've got full-day camp. 4 weekends a year, we've got weekend retreats. Friday nights we have adult social, and then in the summer where it's about an 8-week program. So it's a great question. I'm having trouble answering it. It's probably a 50-50 mix. I think people just think, oh, you're a summer camp anymore. But really, we're engaging the students year-round because it's important to keep their skills up throughout the year and not just for a summer camp. Am I answering your question?
But once again, I'm just curious in this, once again, spring, I only do this because I'm sort of a semi-expert because I had to sit here for 25 meetings on the lights before. Okay. So what percentage, I'm just looking for a number that will be used in the spring and summer when it's light out till 9 o'clock at night
I see what you're saying.
versus the wintertime when that's essentially when the lights will be on and the leaves will be off the trees.
Right.
And there's more time for light pollution.
Right. It's probably a 50-50 split, but I will also say during the academic year in the fall and the spring, our kids are in school, so the programming needs to happen after school and in the evening hours. So there's probably a split that way, but it's probably 50-50.
Now, the campers in the summertime, do they stay over?
We do. We've brought back overnight camp post-COVID for 2 weeks, and then we have muscular dystrophy come and another adult group that serves adults with disabilities come for another week. So currently we have about 4 full weeks of overnight camp.
Are there any of those in the wintertime currently?
Sometimes on the weekends, yes.
And the weekends?
Yes. So we do currently have external groups.
Okay. You mentioned that many families consider this their second home. Could you just elaborate on that?
Sure. We start with kids at the age of 5. We've had some students, including Tammy Gall, who wrote that letter. Her son was with us till he graduated high school at 21 and had to age out of school. He's now employed permanently as a facilities staff for us. So a lot of times, individuals with autism or intellectual disabilities like a routine, like a structure. And so to have the same place to go every Saturday or every summer and every Tuesday and Thursday is really important for the routine and helps teach us skills. So we see students starting at age 5 through high school and past graduation, and now we're focusing on their vocational training to make sure they can have some financial independence and actually be employed in the community independently. So a piece of it is we see them through their entire childhood, and then separately, we have a 1-to-3 ratio, 1 staff to 3 students for every program, which is not required by anybody. And so there's close relationships that are developed and built with our teams. And so it feels like a safe space. It's a safe space where no one's judging them, where they're walking into a pool that's accessible and no one's laughing at them or mocking them. They're able to run around on a field and nobody's able to, say, why are you walking like that? So it feels, it's a safe space for them, and that's what makes it feel like a second home.
You mentioned that the holiday event had 1,600 people from the community. Now, when you say, you mentioned before about the Worcester community, are they 1,600 people from the Worcester community or the community outside of Worcester?
Including Worcester, but above and beyond, yes. So we count who comes in the door in their cars. We also count the volunteers, many of whom are Worcester residents. So altogether, it was 1,500.
Okay. You mentioned the sensory advantages to having an AstroTurf field.
Yeah.
People can see the colors, the green and everything shows up through that. I guess my question is, as Mr. Betts talked about the lights and the size of the poles, would you need the lights to be as high because of the sight problems for the children? I know the fields at the high school are 80, 90 feet high because the kid's going to punt the ball or they're going to throw the lacrosse ball from one end to the other. Do you think that your residents will need the lights as high as you're asking for, or it could be something that the board would look at with a smaller light pole? What do you perceive that you need the poles that high?
So I'll defer probably to the lighting
we can ask
experts
that
in
the next
Mid-Atlantic on that. I mean, I will say, we want to have a safer space for the turf. We also need to teach our kids to accommodate for the space they're in, right? So if the lights are equivalent to another field at somewhere, we'll teach them how do you spot the ball or use a partner or something like that. So it wouldn't be required for them to have it lower, but I'll defer to the, is that okay?
You mentioned that other groups will be using the fields. Now, are they other variety clubs from different areas using it, or who else you're looking to use the fields?
Yep. So other community nonprofit groups, such as Special Olympics, such as some local sports organizations as well, many of whom currently use our gym and our property now, that might not be known to neighbors as well. We ensure that we get insurance requirements, and we're very, very strict about who's on campus, which is different from years and years and years ago. At this point, we want to protect our home, so it's important to us. So it would be nonprofit youth groups.
Having 10 grandchildren all playing sports, fields are very short in this area. Between the girls' lacrosse team, the hockey team, soccer team, every team imaginable is looking for places to play. Will these groups be able to use your field?
Yes.
Okay.
And what's beautiful of that is when we have groups come onto campus, they learn about what we do, and it promotes awareness of inclusion, and we often get volunteers as a result of it as well.
Can you have a band camp? Are you looking to can band camps use the fields as well?
Yes, absolutely they could. I know some of the neighbors have questioned some of the percussion groups that used to borrow our property. They haven't been around in a moment, and we took that feedback and we made a change. So we even had a recent percussion group on campus, but yes, they could.
My last question would be, you said the event in December was a drive-through event. Is that correct?
The December it's one night drive-through and then 2 nights walking. So we could accommodate for those that were, didn't want to be out in a crowd versus those that wanted to spend time with their family and enjoy the property.
And I guess my question to that was, with the drive-through event, were people getting out of the cars to look at your massive board, or did they just drive past the board?
It was a very, very slow. We had people directing the cars, and you couldn't miss it because it was right there in your face as you drove to get through the holiday lane and passed it again on your way out. So we actually passed it twice.
Do you think that people could actually visualize what's on the boards of me sitting here, 20-some feet away? And of course, that was much bigger. They could see the layout of what you're intended to do on the project?
I think I think it was enough to pique curiosity. If somebody asked questions again, then open to anything, open to tours. I have an open door policy. So it definitely was in your face. We put it in a place that you could not miss it because we want to be transparent about it. We've only ever been transparent about everything we do.
How many people did you interact with regarding the plywood board that was there? How many people asked questions?
Yeah.
It's a ballpark.
From Holiday Lane itself.
There's 1,600 people that came through that day.
Yeah,
What percentage of the people had questions about the board?
maybe 5%.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. So, well, I was going to say, so does the audience then have opportunities to ask an individual witness questions? Is that
Yes.
fair and appropriate?
If there are any questions from anybody in the audience of this witness, now would be the time.
Mr. Anhorn? Bob was asking a question.
So I don't see anyone here in the audience. Oh, we do
there's a
have some
couple.
questions, sir. Okay, so we'd ask you to just stand and state your name and address, please.
Bert Hines, 1591 Valley Forge Road. Hynes. B-U-R-T. And mailing address is Collegeville. I just wanted to comment on some things that Ms. Bernardo said. And as Supervisor
So
Betts,
I'm going to just interject for a minute, because this isn't the time for a comment. This is actually only the time if you would have a specific question for this witness. Comments are later in the proceedings.
you mentioned that you had notified the neighbors. To date, I have received 0 letters.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I just, two things. One is, obviously, he's now trying to testify and he's not under oath, but also the solicitor at the very beginning asked if people want to be parties, and in parallel proceedings with the zoning hearing board, parties, and the solicitor was very express about it, if you want to be a party, you have the right to ask questions and present evidence. Public comment is public comment. It shouldn't be the questioning of witnesses by somebody who's not a party. And in addition to that, this gentleman is still trying to testify, and he's been already advised that this is for comment and not for testimony.
Well, so just for me to try to lay the ground rules here. So because you have not been admitted as a party, you do not have the ability to cross-examine this witness. If you have a general question with regard to her testimony, that is permissible now. Again, later in the proceedings, if you want to make any comments with respect to the application after Mr. Jonas has completed all of his witnesses, that would be the time to do that. So hopefully that's clear. We're not here, since you don't have party status, you're not cross-examining this witness, but you're able to ask general questions, because that has been the policy of this board, that we do permit residents to ask general questions with respect to the testimony that isn't arising to participating as a party. I hope that helps.
So what I'll add in there, Bert, is typically we give a little more latitude with public comment if you wanted to make a more generalized comment about being notified or not notified, as an example. That would be an appropriate.
That would be later, though. That
In
won't
public
be
comment,
now.
correct.
Be later.
But I also want to make it clear they'll have an opportunity to do that. We're not allowing him to share that information. This just isn't the spot if that makes sense.
Is this the appropriate time then to ask, when were the letters sent to the neighbors?
So can I answer that?
Since you testified with regard to sending letters, I think that you can do that.
But it's not a comment already. Now we're into questioning by a non-party.
So maybe we'll ask the question differently, as I'll take it back as the board chair, and I'll say, maybe you could give some more information to when the letters were specifically sent out to the neighbors. If you could, I know you talked a little bit about that, but maybe you could be a little bit more clear on that.
I think Mr. Jonas is opposed to that, so I don't want to run into any conflict
Okay,
with that.
okay.
That we closed that, he wasn't a party witness, so I think I can take care of that.
I don't object to the chairman asking the witness to provide further comment and clarification, because The witness-
Yeah, I'm just remembering, Mark, from some past conditional use, we've typically allowed some measure from the audience if they had a specific question on testimony. I don't know that they needed to have party status to do that. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so I would defer to our solicitor in terms of that. I'm just going by past examples there, but we're obviously not looking to take it down the rabbit hole either. We just want to try to cover the ground fairly. So if you,
Should I have the, Dominique, could you just be a little more specific then?
Around the letters?
For the chairman's.
Sure. So because the topic was the conditional use, which related to the lights, we focused on the 50 neighbors, the neighbors on Pot Shop, Horseshoe, and North Trooper, because Valley Forge has really no proximity to the lights itself, and the whole master plan had already been discussed prior to the ordinance. That being said, as a result of this information, we'll be sure in the future to expand our communication far and wide, since it seems that anybody with any proximity to the property would like to be communicated to, and I am more than willing to do that. Again, completely transparent about what we're doing. But specific to the lights, my understanding is there's no way anybody on Valley Forge Road would ever see the lights, so we really focused on the 50 neighbors on those 3 streets that we felt might have questions and targeted that communication.
when
The
did
end
that
of
go out?
November.
Do you know when that, end of November?
Yep.
So, okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Bert.
Rick, a follow-up question to his question to you. On Valley Ford Road, did you measure out from the edge of your property to the properties within 500 feet of that?
To mail the letters?
Yeah, most zoning applications, zoning issues are things that come up. I think the normal thing is 500 feet within the property line. You went beyond that because I know we had a thing from way down the other end of the road you reached out. But I think the question from the person there is, I would think he's pretty close to 500 feet on Valley Forge Road, where his property on Beacon Road comes across the street
Right.
to that.
Yes, correct. But it's nowhere near the lighted fields, which is why we weren't connecting to those neighbors. We were focusing on the neighbors that would have any potential view of the fields themselves. That being said, there was not an intention to not share the information. It was really about capacity. We're a small nonprofit. I have less than 15 full-time staff, and so it was a matter of how can we get the information. I've also been there for 5 years and can count on my hand, or less than one hand, how many neighbors have come and said, tell me about who you are and what you're doing. We've advertised all of our events. It's open to the public. And again, we've been an open book, and we have a lot of presence on social media with what we're doing. So my hope is more neighbors will come and say, tell me about what you're doing, and I'll share.
Yeah, I guess, once again, my question comes back to the parameters of when a zoning change or something's coming up, you usually go 500 feet to the property owners.
Quigley, if I could just interject for a second.
Yep.
So as the solicitor's office, my office did in fact do a buffer search
Okay.
from accordance with the Montgomery County Board of Assessment for all of the parcels owned by the Variety Club. We did that 500-foot buffer search,
Okay.
and notices were mailed to the property owners that came up from that buffer search. That was part of what my office did as the solicitor. There were some folks, the list of those property owners is Exhibit T6. There are some, in fact, Mr. Hines is on the list, 1591 Valley Forge Road. So there was a letter mailed by my office.
Okay.
And I'll just state that certainly it appears he got notice since he's here this evening. So that notice,
Bert's
again,
always
that's
here.
required.
Thank you, and I just want to make sure that,
Yes.
once again, when some of these issues come back,
Complied with the requirements of the Pennsylvania Municipalities
Right.
Planning Code, and I believe perhaps the Variety Club also did some other mailing on their own accord.
okay, I just want to make sure we're dotting the i's and crossing the t's, that someone doesn't come back and say, hey, you didn't notify me. So is it possible that we can send another letter out to that person who's sending it in, or is that not the way it usually works?
Well, now that we're here and we have commenced the hearing, there's not a need to send additional notices.
Thank you.
I think what the board has seen is that some people would have gotten double notice, the notice from the solicitor, and then the varieties focusing on who would be directly impacted or could potentially be impacted by the lights. So there was sort of a double notice, particularly for the people who have the potential of being impacted. And again, responding to Mr. Betts's questions, I think you're going to see that there's very little potential impact at all once you hear the testimony.
So Wendy, it sounded like, I know that Bob had raised a hand as well, and I just want to make sure that we at least understand what it was that he potentially had I don't want to not allow him to say something.
So again,
I just want to handle it.
if there's someone here who has a question regarding the witness's testimony, a point of clarification, now would be the time for that. Again, no, we're not cross-examining, and if you're wishing to make a comment, you will have time to do that. So is there anyone here who has any questions with respect to this witness, of this witness? Not at this time. You have the, if you have, we will have a point in the proceedings where you'll be able to make a comment.
My name's Robert Andorn, A-N-D-O-R-N. So it would have been helpful if you had indicated that anybody who had received the notice, because I am also on Guy Force and did receive a notice, which would mean that I am within 500 feet. And had you noticed or notified us that the only way that we could question and put out forth that information from a witness or any other testimony would be to become a party. So I was not aware that that was the case. And so even though I have a question to make, I will step back so that Mr. Jonas doesn't need to admonish me that I'm not allowed to make a comment.
Okay, well, so let's just, well, now, just a moment, please. We can try to correct if there was some excuse me, sir. This is a public hearing, and I will ask that we do not interrupt, that we treat each other with courtesy. So at this point, if it wasn't clear, I did think I had made it clear when I explained party status that anyone who received a notice was in fact entitled to request party status. I believe I made that clear. If I did not, I apologize. I believe I made that statement. I asked if anyone wished to have party status. There was no response. However, because I understand this is important to folks, we're going to pause in the proceedings. We're going to do things maybe perhaps a little less than would be the ordinary course. And I will, Mr. Jonas, we're going to ask folks again, if there's anyone here who requests party status, I will ask that question again. And if in fact there is, then Mr. Jonas can question them with respect to whether or not they are entitled to have party status, and then the board can make a determination to that effect. I apologize if we're a bit out of order here, but I think this is probably important to the board. It appears to be important to some of the members of the public, so we're going to take a little right turn here.
Okay.
And I apologize, we'll pause with your testimony for a moment. So is there anyone here in the audience who wishes to have party status with respect to the application? Would you please state your name and full address?
Robert Andorn, A-N-D-O-R-N, 1607 California Road.
And did you receive notice of the hearing this evening? You did. Mr. Jonas, do you have any objection to Mr. Andorn having party status?
I do not.
Okay. Mr. Andorn, you are now granted party status. Is there anybody else here in the audience who would like party status? It appears that there are not. So at this point, Mr. Andorn, as a party, you may question the witness and you may cross-examine if you wish.
Thank you very much for correcting that. What was a misunderstanding. And I have no intention of cross-examining witness. I just want to be able to ask a question, which I thought was what Bert was going to do. But that was kind of rejected. So in that context, all of the information that has been presented so far tonight, when was that information prepared and or presented? And if it wasn't by you, then I apologize and I'll hopefully find out who that was. When was that information prepared, presented to the township? And is it your understanding that it was their responsibility to provide that to us, or was that your responsibility to provide?
So we have had the special or conditional use application in this, I'd have to ask council for the actual date. My understanding is that as a good neighbor, our responsibility is to communicate with the neighbors what's happening and share the information. But the town, so that was my understanding, and that's what we felt, that we did it to the best of our ability based on the neighbors that were within certain proximity to the actual field. Does that answer your question?
Because to date, I received a notice that there was a hearing this evening. And then there's a package of information that I can look at tonight. But, and full disclosure, I am a member of the Planning Commission, and this is no different than the Planning Commission. We're given a package of information at the meeting and asked to review it and come up with intelligent questions. I'm unfortunately not that bright that I can do that. So I would love to have had the opportunity to look at the information, formulate some questions that I'm sure I would have to understand the whole process.
Understood. And I would have loved the opportunity to meet you over the past 5 years of my tenure, and I invite you to come to campus, and I would love to personally tour you around campus to show you what we do.
Mr. Anhorn, is your question, when was it all compiled? Because you had it a month ago, 2 months ago? When did you get it to the Planning Commission? Is it any information different here than you, the Planning Commission, looked at?
The Planning Commission was given a package of information on the night that the presentation was made, period. Again, full disclosure, I chose to know, not as a disagreement with Variety Club's mission, program, or anything else. I didn't have an opportunity to review any of that information. So I showed up tonight, and there's a package of information. It wasn't presented before this evening. It wasn't, I mean, yesterday, today, a week ago. I'm not going to, and I can't look at what I have tonight and compare it with what was presented at that opportunity. I think it's not a transparent process, and I'm not blaming the Variety Club for that. I don't know. The process is extremely opaque. You don't have any opportunity to review the information, formulate questions, and ask intelligent questions seeking answers as to what they're doing. I'm very pro Variety Club and their mission. I'm very pro lighting on athletic fields. I'm very anti, I'm not going to give you any information till the night before or the night and expect you to make that decision. So that's where I am as of right now. And I've only asked for party status now so that I can at least ask a question, which apparently, 10 minutes ago I was not allowed.
So you're speaking now as a resident that came to the meeting tonight, that had no idea what was happening. They had no time to review or come up with any questions before the meeting. That's your gripe tonight.
So if I could just, again, explain the process a little bit, just because I do want to try to make this clear. I go back. So the legal notice under the municipality's planning code for a conditional use application, the procedure is the same as for the zoning hearing. So there is a requirement that notice of the proceedings be advertised twice in a newspaper of general circulation in the municipality. That legal notice was advertised in the Times Herald on December 20th and December 27th. The property was posted. Notice of the hearing was mailed to property owners within 500 feet. The application itself has been available for review here at the township building since the legal notice had been published and published and mailed to the property owners. So that is the procedure that was followed. That is what is required by the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. I certainly, the application itself is part of the township exhibits, and I'm happy to give Mr. Andorn a copy of it now if he would like it. I would assume that he did in fact have it at the Planning Commission meeting, which was several weeks ago. The additional information that Mr. Jonas is presenting this evening is part of his case, of his evidence. He has no requirement to provide any of that prior to the hearing this evening. He will be proceeding and presenting exhibits as he has, and if you would like a copy of those exhibits, I don't know if Mr. Jonas has an extra set, or you're welcome to take a look at mine. So hopefully that explains the process, and we have complied with the requirements of the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. While Mr. Andorn is using the word opaque, again, this is what is required, and this is what we've done. He's here, and he's able to review exhibits, listen to the testimony, and participate in the proceedings.
Question for the lawyers in the room. Is this an antiquated process?
Pardon me?
Is this an antiquated process informing the people? Years ago, everyone used to read the paper. Very few people read the newspaper anymore. So I'm just questioning, is this a way that you folks have talked about the legal notice going out? We put it in the paper by law, we have to put it in the paper. Has that been looked at, that that's probably not the best way to do it anymore?
Can I respond to just a couple of things we've heard?
Sure.
One is, there's nothing different, nothing unorthodox about how this application has been presented or has been considered. You, the Board of Supervisors in Worcester Township, go beyond the requirements of the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, because with regard to conditional uses like zoning board applications, the state statute does not require a planning commission review. You've gone the next step and allow the planning commission and say to the planning commission, if it's a zoning board application or if it's a conditional use application, we want you to weigh in on that. And so we did on December 14th. We came in front of the planning commission, which other than Mr. Andorn, endorsed the recommendation for a conditional use. And we did what every other applicant does. We presented information at that planning commission. The solicitor's gone above and beyond that, because you have, besides, you have posting, you have publication in the newspaper, you've got notice to the neighbors, and you got notices from Variety. This township knows that you can do a right-to-know request, or you can come to the township building and examine this. So you've gone above and beyond, and this applicant has done nothing different than to come forward at the planning commission meeting. So December 14th, Mr. Ornan had the possibility since then to review whatever the township had in the record, and the public hearing is exactly, the purpose of a public hearing is for the applicant to come forth under oath with witnesses and present the case and to allow the public to hear. So Mr. Andorn has some bug somewhere about process, but I've been in a lot of municipalities. You can tell by my advanced age, there is nothing opaque about how Worcester Township handles it. We knew that outreach to the neighbors was important to this board. And this applicant, with a history of outreach to the neighbors, went above and beyond as well to make sure that anyone who could possibly be interested, not just those who might be impacted, anyone who might be interested in this, this is one of the most outreaching, forthcoming applicant and client you could want. And so we've done that. So I'm not here to defend Worcester Township. I'm here to say that as a practitioner of the law since 1898, there's nothing opaque about what Worcester has done. Mr. Andorn.
1898?
Yeah, I was doing that purposely. I want to see if you know, you
I'm
really.
paying attention.
But
You caught that, these two on either side.
Listen
Caught that.
really good.
this is a very public process.
Yeah.
This applicant's coming forward tonight to convince the Board of Supervisors to grant an application that is permitted by conditional use. So,
Yep.
again, I think the solicitor has done exactly what the solicitor is supposed to do. The neighbors have been informed, everyone's been informed, nobody has a legitimate gripe. If he's got a personal bug for about other things, it seems to me that's not pertinent to this application, and we shouldn't get sidetracked by it.
Fair enough. We do our best. Occasionally we're agreed with, occasionally we're not. But certainly, Wendy, I appreciate you sort of segueing us so that we can create party status for questions that he has. We certainly want to make sure that those opportunities are presented properly for the public if they feel that's appropriate in terms of that. Steve, to your point, I don't know, we followed the guidelines that get laid before. We ask a lot of questions of our solicitor. We ask a lot of questions of to make sure. The other day, we talked very specifically about making sure, have we crossed the Ts and dotted the Is and met all the requirements that we need to so that we can feel comfortable saying that we are proceeding appropriately with the application and giving it its due course and understanding as a board. That said, we live in a day and age where information people want, and they want it all as soon as they can have it, and we certainly want to try to accommodate that as best we can as well. So, do we have any additional questions for Dominique? I think we're at a spot there where at this juncture. If there's any, I'm going to go back to either of you. Do either of you have any additional points you want her to clarify at this point, or do you feel that, at least at this juncture, she's answered your questions?
I think she did very well in her presentation. I believe we need to move forward on the.
Okay.
It's 8:30. We need to move forward on our additional expert witnesses. And
Creeping along, we can do that. But we also, again, and Mark will appreciate this, we do also want to make sure we give time for public comment at the end of our meeting and that sort of stuff. But I'll defer to you in terms of a next witness if you feel that there's time for, depending on what you have in terms of you two expert witnesses and how you want to handle that. I don't want to have you unnecessarily split them, but, you know, I will defer to you in that.
Would it be helpful to get just a showing of hands of how many individuals in the audience intend to provide public comment?
4 or 5.
There's a handful.
Thank you.
5.
I guess the difficulty might be that, are we, Mark, you have 2 witnesses,
I have 2 more witnesses.
and they are technical witnesses.
Yes, they're technical.
So we're obviously not going to be able to wrap up this evening at 9 o'clock, I would expect. The folks that have wished to make comments with respect to the application, is it preventative, if you could, by a show of hands, is it preventative to any of you that to come back to the next Board of Supervisors meeting that would be on February 21st? Is that right, Sean? Because I don't know that we want to completely, we've already sort of gone down an unusual path. Normally, comments from the public would happen at the very end, after all of the evidence is presented. I mean, for scheduling purposes, if there are folks here that simply can't be here at the next hearing, then I think we can accommodate that. But I don't want to use up the next 30 minutes for comments.
No, I understand that, but we're sort of a conditional use in the middle of a normal business meeting as well. So we have the mechanics of public comment just in the ending of our business meeting and adjournment and those elements. I mean, just the mechanics of that. But I want to be respectful to both sides. You have 2 more witnesses. If there's one that we can get through, I don't think we can get through both. That's probably fair, but I also want to make sure if somebody wants to make a specific comment as well, that they just have an opportunity to do that.
I'm not clear on when you're saying a specific comment with respect to the application.
Well, to your point, if somebody can't be here next month, if somebody wants to make the comment tonight, because they may or may not be able to attend next month, Mark needs to be here, I need to be here.
That's what would be appropriate
Yeah.
right now.
Okay.
So if we could ask for a show of hands, if there's anybody here who cannot be at the hearing next month, I see, you see,
Yeah, there's a couple.
Do you want to extend the meeting?
We don't have to.
all right. You're off the record, right? Thank you.
We said we were going to stop at 8:30, but then we sort
Oh,
of
I
went
thought we said
sideways.
We said we're going to stop at 9. From the beginning, we said we were going to stop at 9, I thought. So, sorry, Mark, do you want to just let the folks, if there are folks here?
Yes.
We'll let them do that now, and then you'll proceed in February with your next 2 witnesses?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, we're going to go back on the record. And
Fair enough.
now we will ask if there's anyone here in the audience who would like to make any statement with respect to the application. This wouldn't be a time for questions. This would just be a statement with respect to the application. And I'd ask if you could, we'll start on the left side of the room, and we'll ask you to stand, come forward so the board and the court reporter can hear and state your name and address. So we'll start on the left side of the room. Is there anyone here in the audience? Oh, sorry, my left. So, ma'am, if you would like to come forward.
Wendy, just so she's coming up, probably a little confusion here. These meetings don't happen in Worcester except over lights. So probably, Mark, the last time we had a meeting like this was when you were here. You know, these
2013.
controversial issues. So it's been a number of years. So we're ironing some of the wrinkles out in how we conduct the business.
You can have a seat. And I know you signed in earlier, but if, again, you would just sort of reiterate your name into the microphone and then share your comment.
Sure, sure. So my name is Kate McShane. I'm sorry? Oh, McShane. First name is Kate. Okay, yeah, yeah. 2976 Horseshoe Drive. So I did receive notice from Variety about the project. It was important to me to come here tonight. I will try to come to the next one. But one of the things that connects me to Variety is a theater project that I do, and we cooperate with them. But I first got involved at Variety in the year 2011. I wrote this down so I would remember it. And I volunteer there on a lot of different projects, going back to Sesame Days, Fall Fest, Holiday Lane, the Christmas party, and also helping with the vocational program, which is a really exciting new development. And as I said, I do a community theater program there, particularly our youth program, which is really, I think, a valuable thing. I have volunteered at Variety for a very long time. I've always been impressed by their work and the importance of their work. But I'm particularly impressed by Dominique. Since she has started, the campus and the programs have improved so much, and they have been wonderful neighbors, at least to me and to my family. There have been a few things over the years. I think the percussion group was one of them. I loved it. I'm a music person. Some people didn't, and they were really responsive to concerns like that. So as a neighbor, I feel that it's just important as a point of pride for the township for us to support this project. I feel comfortable and confident that the lights will be used responsibly and in a way that's respectful of me and my home. And it's just something that I hope will do. I think the field will, in fact, really enhance the campus. And I hope we can all really think about the importance of the students and clients at Variety having the very best, because that's what they deserve.
Thank you, Kate. We appreciate your comments. And I think there was one other gentleman or a couple over here that wanted to. Wait till she sits. She'll give you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ann, A-N-N, Solomon, S-A-L-O-M-O-N. I live at 1440 North Wales Road. However, I live in Whitpain, which is right across from Worcester. I'm here to talk to you, to advocate to please vote for the lighting for purposes. I'm a parent of a individual who has been involved at Variety. He's 27 now, since he's been 10. He's been in every program that Dominique has mentioned. He's also was in their vocational. I'm a proud parent to say that with Variety's help, he has been employed for 5 years, which is phenomenal. He's on the autism spectrum. He's also participated in other nonprofit programs that have done recreational programs. He used to do top soccer there. On Friday nights. It's his home. And for those who get it or they don't get it, for a parent with someone with a challenge, that's a place, it's their safe haven. And they're not bullied because it's not tolerated. They just feel comfortable. And when you say, let's go to Variety, you don't get a meltdown. I'm just saying they're doing wonderful things. I'm also on the board for Special Olympics of Montgomery County, and our athletes love this place. A lot of our athletes have grown up through Variety, and, you know, it's a nonprofit as well. And we're also trying to utilize space. It's hard to get as well. So please vote in favor of the lighting. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Ann. We
Are there any questions?
we appreciate your comments. Sir?
So my name is Kevin Ciabattoni, C-I-A-B-A-T-T-O-N-I. So I'm a lifelong resident of Worcester. I grew up in Worcester on Trooper Road. And in 2000, I built a home at the corner of Pot Shop and Landis Road, 2961 Pot Shop Road, which is catty corner to the Variety Club's entrance. So I am fairly close to Variety Club. And I've grown up with Variety Club my whole life, knowing what's going on there, where they're at, and what they do. Since Dominique has become the part of them, nobody has reached out like she has. I've been there 23 years. Anyone before that has never reached out to the neighbors. And she's the first one that has communication with us. So she invited all the neighbors that I know of around me to the meetings that they had when they just started this whole plan. I attended 2 of them. And the most recent one was about the lighting for the fields. So that night, I had a lot of questions for the one of the gentlemen with the lighting. And by the end of the night, because I'm worried about the light pollution from my house, I do not want to, be disturbed any more than I have to be. Mm-hmm. That's the whole reason why I built in Worcester. And by the end of the night, from what he said and what he has shown me, I am in favor of the lighting for the field. So if you could, I request that you approve it. And that's it tonight.
Thank you, Kevin.
Sir, which corner are you on? Are you on the east end or the west end of Landis and Pot Shop?
I am on the side closer to Valley Forge Road.
Okay. I would say that's the west side, I guess.
Yeah.
West side.
Like coming down the hill, in essence, on the right-hand side. Gotcha.
Okay, thank you.
I think there was one more gentleman back there. We just.
My name is Rusty, R-U-S-T-Y, Carfagno, C-A-R-F-A-G-N-O. I own the farm, Whitetail Farm, which is directly adjacent to Variety Club. We are neighbors, and I'd like to start off by saying when it comes to transparency, keeping us informed, nobody does it better than Dominique. There is no question about that. A little surprised at some of the comments that were made tonight, but I can vouch for that. For those of you who haven't been by that property, I've bought that property. It's a 57 or 55 acre parcel that was zoned for development. I bought that property. I've put a ton of money into it, making it presentable, trees. I do not plan on developing it. I plan on possibly building a house there at some point, but that's a whole nother story. And I went to the meeting that Dominique invited the neighbors to, met with the engineers, and was absolutely flabbergasted at the technology about lighting. If there is any neighbor that would be affected by this, there is not a neighbor that is closer to this lighted field than my property. I mean, I could shoot a basketball and hit the field maybe. So it's also in keeping with the mission, I think, that is Variety Club's mission in helping these kids. And, their goal of not developing that land. And it takes money to do that. And I think this is just part of the master plan, and I think it would be a tremendous asset to the township, to the individuals that they help. And I am totally, totally in favor of it and ask you guys to approve it. Thank you.
Mr. Question, Carfax now, does your property run pretty much the whole length? Knowing there's a couple of businesses there, then your house sits there. It must extend pretty far down into the Variety Club.
The entrance to there's two entrances to my property, one on Trooper Road and one on Township Line Road. It's kind of that road to nowhere that everybody
Right,
sees.
yeah, I understand.
That's the entrance to the back way of my property. The back of my property, which is it was going to be the cul-de-sac for the new development that I think John Western had,
Right.
presented years ago. There's a little cul-de-sac back there. What was going to be the cul-de-sac is where my property butts up against Variety Club. We communicate all the time. We're great neighbors. We want to be great neighbors to everybody. I'm all in favor of this.
Your property will be the closest property probably to the fields there?
There is no question about it, other than maybe Technitool.
A technical rate, but that's not a...
But I am right there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Carfax, I have a question. Is your property protected? Deed rights been sold, or, is it protected where it can never be developed, your property, your 55 acres?
Is my property protected? No.
Okay, so my question is, and this is just a concern, I appreciate everything you're saying, everything you're doing. I think we're all pretty much helping this circumstance. There'll be a time when your property may be sold, and if it's not protected, it could be developed.
Well, you have to talk to my kids about that.
I understand. I'm just looking into the future because I've seen enough of this. I've been here 35 plus years.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't have any intention of doing that, and there are ways to protect my property against future development that I am considering.
My only question is we go forward with this, and the lights are up, and then your property is to be sold and may be developed. There would be conflict. It would be existing, so anybody that would come forward to do anything would understand that it is what it is. So my only question would be, you have to take that into consideration. But I appreciate everything you're doing, and I understand that,
And I really think then you're not going to get the opportunity to see this
yes.
Presentation tonight on the lighting, and you guys have been through this, as you say, but it is incredible.
It's the state of the art of the current times. It's the best of the best right now.
Technology is incredible. There is no light wash. There is, it's, trust me, I
agree.
I checked it out.
I'm just trying to cross all the...
Again, your address is 1845?
I'm sorry?
What's your address there?
1543.
1543, look before. I guess Mr. Betts' question, there's no development on the property now.
Correct.
There's no homes.
Yes.
If the Variety Club would get the lights and they're up, the person moving into the house should know the lights are in the backyard before you purchase the property. So it's not that we're hiding something from somebody. Certainly they should look at the property. it was much the same at the Lights
Right.
football field. So,
Like pine
We're right.
trees that butt up to power lines. I mean, nobody's hiding anything here, so,
It would be an existing condition at that point if it came to that. It would just be a neighboring property that happens to have a field with lights on it if,
and I also own another property on Hollow Road in Worcester, so I'm a Worcester guy, so,
well, we appreciate you haven't developed to date. We'd love for you never to develop. We certainly love our green space, and that would be tremendous. To Mr. Betts's point, though, it's not a deed-restricted property. It's an owner choice at this juncture to not do that.
that is correct.
thank you.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty. Appreciate it. Now, I don't want to cut anyone off, but I think we have all the people that felt they needed to speak tonight. Wendy, is that fair?
I believe so. Mark, did you have anything else tonight? Okay.
Okay.
So at this point, we would need to announce on the record that we will be continuing the proceedings this evening to the next.
We could just make sure we say the date correctly into all.
Okay, so it's February 21st. This proceedings will be continued to February 21st. The regular meeting will commence at 7:00 p.m., and the conditional use hearing will begin sometime thereafter following the public business meeting. Mr. Jonas, are you in agreement with the continuance to that date? Thank you. With that, we're adjourned for this evening. Everyone here this evening has notice that has been announced, and Sean, I would ask that you also post the information on the website regarding the continuance. There will not be any notices mailed of the continuance.
And there's no additional advertising requirement on a
There is
continuance
not.
as well, correct?
There is not. That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so the hearing's closed, and we can go back into our regular meeting.
Okay, so this is going to be like deja vu. We're now back on to our regular meeting, and the next item, well, we actually have other business. Does any other board member wish to bring up any other business before the board tonight?
I have one comment or one statement. In regarding to Bob Andor's comment on the budget that we approved, I reviewed it. I believe that the budget we had, at least the first 12 pages of it, were 24. And I think there's a discrepancy on whether it was a partial 23 or 24 budget, and I would love to have an investigation on the timeline of who presented it, when it was presented, when it was adjusted, if we need to re-vote on that. But I still need to know, was it presented correctly? Was it partial 23 budget? And who's accountable?
So we're going to need to get more information.
I do.
Understood. I hear what you're saying.
Want to know.
We're going to need to get some more information on that. So that's noted
Thank you.
for sure. Okay. I don't have any other business. Steve, do you have any other business tonight? Perfect. So we do also have the opportunity for our regular business meeting for public comment. If anybody would like to make any public comment for the board relative to our business meeting at this time. Bob?
Bob Andor, Worcester. So I just want to kind of clear up the record because apparently people got offended by me expressing my opinion that the process was opaque. So, and maybe that's just my naivete and not trying to step on Wendy's toes. I mean, if you guys advertised it and you're not obligated to give us anything, then you've done everything that you were required to. My comment on the opaqueness specifically refers to starting with the Planning Commission meeting, where we were given a package that was what Wendy has just indicated to us, you know, is the conditional use application. Yes, I have that. I received that prior to that. There's no information. But coming to that meeting, we were then given a package that was 30 pages that was going to be a presentation with the expectation that we would ask questions, formulate ideas, understand what was being presented. Unfortunately, I'm not capable of doing that in that time frame. And therefore, from my standpoint, that process was opaque. We were not given the opportunity to review that information in advance. So similar to this evening, I'd ask you, just tell me if I need to file right to know, what information did you have prior to this meeting regarding any presentation information? Did you have any of it or none of it?
We had none of the packet that he provided tonight in terms of, we would have had bits and pieces of the information, but in terms of,
I can just jump in.
yeah, go ahead.
So what the board would have been provided is the conditional use application itself.
And that's
That is
it.
what would have been provided to the board prior to this evening. Because it is a hearing prior to this evening, the applicant presents their evidence at the hearing, and that is when the supervisors receive that information and that evidence. They do not get it ahead of time.
That's this document here that we were presented this evening by Mr. Jonas.
And that's the document that we were presented and expect, so goodness, you guys are great, are better, certainly better than I, to be able to digest that information, formulate your questions. At least you have time to now review that and formulate some questions prior to next month's meeting. We did not have that opportunity, and consequently, for the record, I voted no conditionally by expressing my opinion that I'm not opposed to lighting.
Right.
I'm not opposed to the Variety Club. I just wasn't able to formulate any questions. And so, you know, part of the presentation is going to be some technical information specifically on what these lights will do. And we sat in a meeting with a review letter from John Everts that basically said, you have to dot this, dot this I, cross this T. Oh, and my caveat is, I'm not a lighting guy. So I don't know any of this stuff. So, well, you
Conditional use, and it's a conditional use to allow the lighting higher than 12 feet.
but you,
Specific requirements in the ordinance. It specifically requires, it doesn't require, it suggests that the township has a lighting expert. I can't consider myself a lighting expert. I've done enough lighting reviews to be confident in performing a conditional use review with regard to lighting.
so, okay.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
stand corrected.
Well,
Justify that conditional use application you got in the commission is probably the same thing that the board got here today. And that's what I reviewed. It was included in that packet, and I provided my review with that information. So additional exhibits that the applicant provided at the time of the planning commission, probably what they're going to provide at the conditional use hearing, are additional exhibits to help illustrate their point to the audience, the residents, to the board. So I don't think that the additional information that was presented at that night of the planning commission would sway anything that the planning commission was just additional information, background. That kind of information was presented to everybody in the planning commission at that point.
so John, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you. I hear you. I respect your comments. I respect your concerns in terms of the information. And certainly, as Mr. Jonas said, we're not required to put any information to have it even pass through the Planning Commission. Doesn't mean our process can't be better. It always is something that we can look at, but we certainly, I don't have any issue with you voting yes or no or anything. I think this board has been exceptional about not trying to put a finger or a thumb on saying what the Planning Commission should or shouldn't do. It's an advisory board. We want them to advise, and then it's our decision and choice collectively to say, do we take everything they say and how do we take it? And, it becomes part of our decision-making. But certainly, look, we want to make sure we're following the law. That's kind of one of the first barriers. We need to make sure we're doing everything in that regard. We want to try to make every effort to make information available. And if we don't, then we want to be better about doing that. But, there's always going to be some line, as John's saying, there's a satisfaction that's being made to the sort of legal requirement, and then there's just sort of, hey, could we have been better in how we shared the information and got the information? The lighting stuff's tricky. I mean, you were here in the audience, 10 years ago when we went through, 15 or 18 conditional use, talking about foot candles and all sorts of things, knew more about lighting than any of us would have ever imagined. And I don't know that I know anything about lighting, other than, what we went through there. But again, I don't want to deny you any opportunity to share public comment. We certainly, we take it. We want to take it, and we want to make sure that we're doing as good a job as we can with these types of things. So
I apologize. I wasn't aware that we were entitled to any information beforehand, and that
we don't have a lot of we don't have a lot of experience with it either. That's why we're relying on Wendy and John.
My impression was that the information that they would have, that they would share in advance, so that we would have the opportunity to review it and comment intelligently on it. Unfortunately, I'll take the time now to look at it.
You just don't need to give it in advance. When we get it, we get it, and then it's fair enough.
Again, their presentation may be 100% accurate. I don't know. But I certainly wasn't given the opportunity to review it other than to say, here's a presentation, accept it. And I don't know that I could accept it without having done my research. If you're looking for a rubber stamp from me or the Planning Commission, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that.
I don't think we've ever asked you guys to do that, and never will, at least as long as I have any say in that.
I'm going to do my job, which is to review the information to be sure that it's there. I realize it's just an advisory position, but from that standpoint, I'm going to do the job that has been tasked of me. And so, relevant to the Variety Club, again, I believe what Dominique's saying, but at the same time, she's saying we have made the determination on who this lighting will impact, as opposed to me having a say or somebody else having a say. I don't live in Marybrook or Marymead or anywhere else. I live where I live, and I'm adjacent to the property. It may not have an impact. I don't know. But I ought to be able to at least understand the presentation, but I now understand the process. I get presented the information and I can accept it and or try to ask an intelligent question without having had the opportunity to do that. And I'm not trying to throw John under the bus. I just literally looked at his review letter. And it said, I've reviewed it for compliance, but understand I'm not a lighting expert.
Yep.
And so I'm saying, okay, well, who is the lighting expert? Who's going to be doing that? At what point in time? And just to be sure that, what they have told us and presented to us is accurate, and it's going to be there. I mean, we say, okay, and then they do something, and it's not compliant, well, then what? Then we can start a process of saying, well, it didn't really comply. Well, it's what I told you I was going to do. So I'm just trying to be sure that it's accurate. I'm really not. I stand by my position before. I'm not opposed to the Variety Club, and I'm certainly not opposed to lighting of athletic fields. In fact, I think it should be codified so that it's allowed all year round, and specifically at Hebner Park and other places. I don't have a problem with that. But understand, I would want those people who are going to do that to say, here's what I'm going to do, to allow people to look at that, comment on it, and have everybody have a say. That's the same thing I'm asking for here. But I misunderstood as to whether I was entitled to that. So again.
These are tricky. Conditional uses, there's limited audience participation. I mean, that's part of it. Part of it is it's a quasi-legal proceeding, and you don't have necessarily the same as just a normal issue that might come before the board, which we allow full public comment on those issues all the time. This does have more restrictive qualities to it because it's more of a legal proceeding. But again, I appreciate everything you're saying, Bob. I always do. I don't just say, I always say we appreciate your comment because we do. We don't have to agree with it, or sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But we certainly, I understand your position, and we appreciate that you serve on our planning commission. I've said it once, I said it 1,000 times. I said it to you privately, I said it to you publicly. We're not here to tell you how you should or shouldn't vote on any issue, on anything comes before you. And I stand comfortably saying I have never once reached to you or any other planning commission member in my entire time and said, I want you to vote this way or that way, or try to lean on the scale at all. You're an advisory board. We value that you advise us to the best of your ability. We understand that you're hogtied occasionally based on timing and what you got or didn't get. I mean, we factor that in as much as we can into our decision-making. So, can I appreciate your comments in that regard. So thank you, Bob.
Real quick, Rick.
Sure.
How much advance notice did you have this report prior to the land planning meeting?
That's not.
That's not a report.
That is not a report. Those are exhibits.
Okay, did John have a report
I had plans and conditional use hearing.
prior to the land planning meeting? And how long did you have that prior to that meeting? Week?
I issued a letter December.
How long did you have to review that? A week. And land planning had all of 5 minutes to make a decision. That's his concern. Not your fault.
Well, I'm just saying, did you have a copy of the conditional use application? Not, did you have anything before? We had a conditional use application that had issues that date, like right issues must go, like that. I would have to go back and look at that today. It's my understanding, my recollection is that we had the conditional use application, which is 5, 6 pages, and it was the application that they filled out, checks and boxes, and said this is what we're looking for, right? So I could be wrong, I don't recall. I had that, and I had HG plans that must go. I know that we didn't have any drawings that had any impacts, we had no, we just knew that it was like, and quite honestly, it has nothing, this isn't even a discussion of what they're allowed to build or not allowed to build.
Correct.
On lighting of the fields.
Correct, which is the only item that is under conditional use application. Again, this is where you're splitting the pieces. It's not about land development. It's not about that piece of it. It's just their ability to have illuminated fields under a conditional use application. Correct. Correct. Thank you, John.
I'm done.
Okay.
Let's go.
Anyone else want public comment? All right. Motion to adjourn.